They told her a girl's education is worthless, but Cherry refused to accept that lie. Every single day, she labored beneath the scorching sun, selling handmade clay pots just to afford her school fees. Then, just when her dream was almost within reach, her own mother threw all her books into the fire, hoping to crush her spirit forever. But what they never understood is this: when the world attempts to destroy your future, God is already preparing your greatest breakthrough. Stay with this story until the very end and witness how the girl they tried to break rose to a success that nobody could stop. Cherry grew up in a small, struggling household with her mother, Barbara, and her older sister, Shania. Life inside that house was hard, not only because of poverty, but because of constant conflict and jealousy. Cherry believed firmly that education could transform her life, but nobody under that roof supported that belief. Every morning before sunrise, Cherry awoke quietly and prepared for a long, exhausting day. She wrapped a cloth around her head, grabbed her digging tools, and walked to the riverbed where raw clay could be found. The labor was brutal. She dug clay from the earth, packed it into heavy sacks, and carried everything home on her back. Once home, she carefully shaped the clay into pots with patient, skilled fingers. After drying and firing them, she carried the finished pots to the market and waited for buyers. Every coin she earned was precious because it brought her one step closer to paying her university tuition. Barbara made no effort to hide her feelings. "Why are you torturing yourself like this?" she would say. "Education for a girl means nothing. In the end, you will simply marry and belong to a man's household." Cherry would lower her eyes and stay silent. She knew arguing would only bring more trouble. Shania was even worse. She openly mocked her younger sister, spending her own days gossiping with neighbors or sleeping late. "Look at you," Shania would say with a smirk whenever Cherry returned tired and dusty from the market. "Working yourself like an animal just because of school. Do you honestly think you will become someone important?" Cherry ignored the insults, but deep inside, those words wounded her. Still, she refused to give up. At night, after finishing her chores, Cherry studied using worn-out textbooks she had gathered over the years. Because she trusted nobody in the house, she kept her savings hidden inside a small tin box buried beneath loose floorboards. That money represented her entire future. No one knew how much she had saved. No one knew how dangerously close she was to paying her first tuition installment. As Cherry closed her books one night, she whispered to herself with fierce determination, "One day, this hard work will change everything." She did not yet know that someone in that house was already watching her closely, and that her greatest obstacle was not poverty, but the jealousy sleeping right under the same roof. Weeks passed, and Cherry continued pushing herself harder every single day. While others slept, she was already at the riverbed digging clay with exhausted hands. Her body ached constantly, but she never complained. A few of the older women at the market began noticing her remarkable dedication. One of them, Mama Esther, often bought a pot even when she had no real need for one. "You are a hard-working girl," Mama Esther told her one afternoon. "I pray your dream succeeds." Words like those gave Cherry genuine strength. Meanwhile, Shania watched everything with growing frustration. She hated how neighbors praised Cherry. She despised how people talked about her perseverance. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by and said to Barbara with a warm smile, "Your younger daughter is very serious. That girl will become something important one day." Shania's expression immediately hardened. After the visitor left, she turned to her mother in anger. "Why do people keep praising her? She acts as if she is better than all of us." Barbara shrugged dismissively. "Let her exhaust herself," she replied. "Soon she will realize school cannot change her life." But Shania was not satisfied with that answer. That same night, when Cherry was outside washing clay from her hands, Shania slipped quietly into Cherry's corner and began searching through her belongings. She found the textbooks, the carefully written notes, and then something that made her eyes go wide: an official university admission letter. Cherry had already been accepted. Shania folded the paper slowly, her mind racing with dark fury. "If she leaves this house," she whispered, "everyone will think she is better than us." At that moment, jealousy transformed into something far more dangerous. Shania began planning how to stop Cherry permanently. The days that followed were filled with small, cruel acts of sabotage. Shania hid Cherry's digging tools. She poured water into carefully prepared batches of clay, ruining them completely. She interrupted Cherry during her studies, sending her on pointless errands or starting arguments designed to break her concentration. Cherry remained patient throughout, believing the tension would eventually pass. But her silence only encouraged Shania further. Barbara made things worse by supporting Shania's behavior instead of correcting it. "You are wasting your youth chasing books," Barbara told Cherry one evening. "Look at your sister. She enjoys life while you suffer every single day." Cherry swallowed those painful words and kept reading. Late one night, when everyone appeared to be asleep, Shania rose quietly from her bed. She moved carefully across the dark room and knelt beside Cherry's study corner. She picked up the textbooks one by one, flipping through the pages with tight, resentful lips. These books represented everything Cherry had worked for, everything Shania feared. She glanced toward the hearth in the corner of the house. Her eyes darkened. "If the books disappear," she whispered softly, "the dream will disappear too." She gathered the books and notes in her arms and walked slowly toward the fire. In that moment, Shania made a decision that would change all of their lives forever. The following afternoon, Cherry returned from the market feeling exhausted but hopeful. She had sold most of her pots that day and was one step closer to paying her tuition. But as she approached the house, something felt wrong. A faint smell of burnt paper hung in the air. She walked faster. When she entered the house, the smell became overwhelming. Her eyes moved immediately to the hearth. The ashes looked unusual. Her heart began to race. She rushed to her corner. The space was completely empty. Panic hit her chest like a crushing blow. She searched everywhere: the floor, the table, the basket where she kept her notes. Nothing. Cherry turned slowly toward the hearth. Small black fragments of burnt paper were scattered among the gray ashes. "No, no," she whispered. She dropped to her knees and dug through the ashes with trembling hands. Some pages were completely destroyed. Others were half-burned, the words twisted and blackened beyond recognition. The moment she touched the fragile remains, they crumbled to dust in her fingers. Tears filled her eyes. "My books!" she cried softly. Then she heard a quiet laugh from behind her. Shania was standing near the doorway, leaning against the wall with a cold smile. "Looking for those old books?" she asked casually. Cherry stared at her in shock. "You burned them?" she asked, her voice shaking. Shania shrugged as though it meant nothing. "They were useless anyway. I simply helped you face reality." Barbara walked in and looked at the scene without concern. "Good," she said bluntly when Cherry explained what had happened. "Maybe now you will stop chasing this foolish dream."
Cherry felt her chest tighten with a pain she had never experienced before. The betrayal cut deeply because it came from the very people who should have protected her. Shania stepped closer and spoke with cruel satisfaction. No matter how much you study, you will never become anything special." Cherry looked at the ashes, tears rolling down her face. In a single terrible moment, years of preparation had turned to smoke. But deep inside her, beneath the heartbreak and grief, something else was beginning to rise. A quiet, unbreakable determination that even fire could not touch. Cherry wiped her tears, checked that her hidden savings were still safe, and walked out of the house without a single word. She went straight to Mama Esther at the market and explained everything: the burned books, the betrayal, and her fear that things would only get worse. Mama Esther listened quietly. "Some people fear what they do not understand," she said, "but that does not mean you should ever stop moving forward." Cherry asked if Mama Esther could keep her savings safe. The older woman agreed immediately. "You did the right thing coming here. Your future must be protected." That night, walking home, Cherry understood something both painful and freeing. Her house was no longer a place of support, but her dream was still alive, and she was ready to fight for it alone if she had to. The next morning, Cherry woke with swollen eyes but a clearer mind than she had known in weeks. She sat quietly and began recalling everything she had studied. She closed her eyes and repeated lessons in her head. Slowly, piece by piece, the knowledge returned. The books were gone, but the learning remained. No fire could ever reach that. That single realization gave her a powerful spark of hope. Cherry returned to her routine with even greater intensity. She dug clay at the riverbed each morning, reciting formulas and definitions as she worked. In the evenings, she rewrote lessons entirely from memory, using a few old notebooks donated by the women at the market. The market women had heard about what happened and rallied around her. One brought an old notebook her son no longer used. Another gave loose pages from a discarded workbook. Someone else found a pen. "These may not be much," one woman said, "but they will help you begin again." Cherry's eyes filled with grateful tears. Night after night, she sat beneath her small lamp and rebuilt her studies from scratch. She explained topics out loud to herself, imagining standing before a classroom teaching what she had learned. She could explain it clearly. She understood it deeply. The fire had destroyed her books, but had not touched her mind. And slowly, Cherry began proving something remarkable. The mind remembers what fire cannot erase. As weeks passed, Cherry also improved her pottery skills. She began experimenting with decorative designs, carving delicate patterns into her pots and polishing them carefully before firing. The new designs immediately caught attention at the market. Customers admired them and sales increased steadily. Then one evening, a trader from another town approached her stall. He examined her decorated pots carefully and offered a large order, 30 pots in 1 week. Cherry agreed without hesitation. The order meant more work, but it also meant significantly more income. She completed all 30 pots on time. The trader returned, inspected each piece, and nodded with genuine satisfaction. "These are even better than I expected," he said. He paid the agreed amount and added a small bonus as encouragement. "You are talented. Keep improving." The money Cherry received was more than she had earned in many weeks. She traveled immediately to the university office and handed over the next installment of her fees. Standing at that payment desk and handing over coins she had earned through her own sweat and determination, Cherry felt something she had almost forgotten: pride. When she returned home that evening and told them where she had been, Shania's eyes widened with anger. "You are still wasting money on that foolish school?" she snapped. Cherry looked at her sister steadily. "This is not a waste," she replied quietly. Barbara shook her head. "You are becoming proud." Shania spoke bitterly. "Maybe she is getting money from some rich man. How else can she pay school fees?" Cherry felt the insult sting, but this time she did not stay silent. "No one is giving me anything. I worked for every single coin. Hard work builds things that laziness never will." The room fell completely silent. It was the first time Cherry had spoken to them without any trace of fear. A few weeks later, Cherry officially began attending university classes. The first day felt surreal. For years, she had imagined walking through those doors, and now she was finally there. She arrived early, chose a quiet seat near the front, and treated every lecture with the seriousness it deserved. While other students relaxed, Cherry studied every single day. She reviewed notes after class and asked questions whenever she did not fully understand something. Balancing school and pottery was exhausting, but Cherry reminded herself constantly why she had started. As months passed, Cherry began noticing that her education was directly helping her business. One of her courses covered small business management, pricing products, tracking expenses, negotiating contracts, understanding written agreements. She listened to every word carefully. One afternoon, her lecturer asked students for examples of traditional businesses that could grow with better management.